The Roger Pirates were the only crew to ever reach Laugh Tale with a crew of
not 2, not 3,
but 4 Conquer's Hockey users.
How come you don't want me, man?
This crew went down in history as possibly the strongest crew of all time and the king of the seas. So today we'll be discussing what made the Roger Pirates so strong by first going through their history and accomplishments, and then discussing the power of Roger, his top crew members, and the rest of the Roger Pirates. As always, if you like content like this, make sure you subscribe and join our King Pirates crew. And if you have a good time watching this video, please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. But let's start things off with a quick history lesson, because despite the fact that we don't know much about the Roger Pirates, we do know many of the big accomplishments they've had. First off, the crew was founded 52 years ago with Roger and Rayleigh, and this bit of information is actually important to consider because just 13 years later, the Roger Pirates without Kazuki Odin became the first crew to ever reach Lodestar Island. Now, the mystery of Lodestar Island has always been something I've been highly interested in, because unlike Laugh Tale, there doesn't seem to be any prerequisites like gathering all the 4 road poneglyphs to reach that island. Based off of what we know, all you have to do is follow the log pose into the last island. But for some reason, no other pirate crew has been able to make it to that island, and the Roger Pirates did it in just 13 years, so I think that speaks to their ability. What speaks even more to their ability though is what they did just a year later at the God Valley incident. This was the legendary event where the Rocks Pirates were defeated by the Roger Pirates and Garp. And honestly, I think this might be the greatest feat not only for the Roger Pirates and Garp, but anybody in general. Like, the amount of top tier people that were in the Rocks Pirates is absolutely astonishing. So for another group to defeat them is just wildly impressive. In fact, it's so impressive that a lot of people don't even believe that's truly what happened. Even personally, I think Whitebeard might have played a factor into it and maybe switched sides. But with the information we know right now, we just have to take it at face value, which is that the Roger Pirates along with Garp defeated the Rocks Pirates. And if that's the case, I think this feat makes the Roger Pirates really impressive. Not just Rayleigh and Scopper, but everybody had to pull their weight. But even after winning that battle at God Valley, the Roger Pirates would continue to prove themselves against the remnants of the Rocks Pirates. First off, they went into Big Mom's territory and stole a copy of the Road Poneglyph. After that, they faced off against a large fleet of the Golden Lion Pirates in the Ed War, which they fought to a draw with a little help from Mother Nature. And I think it's important to remember that those things were done not only with Roger being sick, but also without Kazuki Odin, because the Whitebeard Pirates were the next Rocks Pirates remnants that the Roger Pirates faced. Once again, these two pirate crews fought to a draw after 4 days of fighting, after which the Roger Pirates gained another monster in Kazuki Odin. After that, the rest is history. They had everything they needed to collect the poneglyphs, reach Laugh Tale, and become the king of the seas. So far, that's the impressive resume that we have on the Roger Pirates, but let's talk about what made them so strong. So let's start off this discussion by discussing the top dogs of the crew, the captain and his commanders, who are technically not his commanders, they're just the people that we mainly know, like Rayleigh, Scopper, and Odin. But we'll start off by discussing Roger, the Pirate King himself, the pirate with the highest bounty ever. And for Roger, I think as far as notoriety goes, he's clearly the top one because he's done so many things that other people have not. And I think that definitely speaks to his ability, not only having the power to overcome his obstacles, but also having specific abilities like the voice of all things. But also him getting that notoriety definitely had to do with his goals and personality of just wanting to explore the world and see the last island. So despite the fact that Roger is without a doubt the most accomplished pirate, it doesn't necessarily mean he's definitely the strongest. But that being said, I think if you look at all the other things that Roger has done and the powers that he has, it's pretty hard to argue that he wasn't the strongest. In fact, the only other people I consider in contention to be the strongest of all time are Whitebeard, Garp, and Rocks. All 3 of these characters have not only had amazing feats of strength, but are also the only 3 characters that have been portrayed as Roger's rival. First off, there's Whitebeard, who had the title of the strongest man in the world, and he was not only mentioned as Roger's rival, but we also saw it firsthand. Rocks, on the other hand, was noted as Roger's first rival and perhaps his greatest, and although we haven't seen him fight at all or any of his abilities, just him being the captain of that crazy crew is a major feat. And then finally, we have Garp, the hero of the Marines, and some people might disagree with me here that he's in this conversation, but I think time and time again he has been portrayed as Roger's rival. They also fought together at God Valley, but also through their interactions, I think you can really feel their mutual respect for each other as rivals. So with that being said, I think those are the only other people that are in contention for the strongest of all time. So even if you hate Roger, I think at the very worst, the lowest you can place him is 4th strongest of all time. But personally, I still think he's the GOAT. And that is because with each and every one of these rivals, battles through the years and through his sickness, not once was he defeated. At the God Valley incident, up against this crazy crew, he still defeated Roxy Zebek and the Rocks Pirates. Up against Garp, although he was cornered many times, he was never captured, and Whitebeard he technically defeated as well at God Valley. Plus, I think when you look at the abilities that he has, he's kinda two of a kind, with the other one being Luffy. Not only knowing Conqueror's Haki, but also having advanced Conqueror's Haki, and on top of that, the voice of all things. So with those abilities in his bag and everything that he's accomplished, I think he's gotta be the GOAT. Despite that though, he does have other people that rival his power, and he's not this undefeatable god. In order for him to have all those accomplishments, he needed to establish a strong support system, and that's where his crew comes in. We'll start by discussing where it all began with his first crew member, his right hand, Silver's Rayleigh. And I'm gonna say this right off the bat, I think very highly of Rayleigh. Low-key, that's kind of a bar. But as far as Rayleigh goes, not only has he shown a good amount of power, like clashing with Kizaru at an old ass age and using Conqueror's Haki very well, but there are two specific things that really elevate him for me, and that is his knowledge and the God Valley incident. First off, there's his knowledge, which we've seen many times through flashback of him teaching Luffy, and this man has shown an incredible amount of knowledge with his understanding of Haki and devil fruits, and because of that knowledge that he has, it makes me believe that he's mastered everything to his full potential. Now, does that mean he has the advanced form of every single type of Haki? Not necessarily, because maybe that's just above his ceiling, but the type of person he seems to be, a very knowledgeable guy that likes to learn everything, I think whatever his ceiling is, he's definitely reached it. So the next question is, what is his ceiling? And this is where the God Valley incident comes in, because once again, if we take that fight at face value, it makes the Roger Pirates very impressive, because with how many top tier people the Rocks Pirates have, the first thing we're gonna think about is individual matchups. So from the top, you could have Roger versus Rocks, and then maybe Garp versus Whitebeard, but then you still have Kaido, Big Mom, and Shiki. And those guys, even back then, I think were top tier, and you needed to be incredibly strong to counter them. And I think Rayleigh had to be that next guy up to take on Big Mom or Kaido. And even if it was a situation where he wasn't going to win and like Roger defeated Rocks, so it kind of tipped the scales, at the very least, he had to be close enough in strength to Big Mom and Kaido to at least hold them off. So that's why I think incredibly highly of Rayleigh. I think he's the definition of a top tier right hand, which I think is even another level above your Yonko commanders like King, Marco, and Katakuri. Because while Marco, Katakuri, and King are incredibly strong, they're really not in the same discussion as the Yonko. Whereas Rayleigh, I think in his prime, was in that discussion. For example, when Garp talked about Rayleigh being another legend just like Whitebeard, I don't think Marco, Katakuri, or King would get that type of treatment years down the line. And I think another great example is what we saw in the anime and how easily he took care of Marco like it was a joke. And I know that's anime only, but I do think that really fits the portrayal of Rayleigh. And I'm gonna end off the Rayleigh discussion with this question for you guys. If Prime Rayleigh were alive today in this era, would he be Yonko level? Honestly, I think he would be, even if he was the weakest Yonko. With that said, let's talk about the other two top fighters, and that is Scopper and Odin. We'll start off with Scopper because there's really not that much to go off of. We haven't really seen him fight in the story, so the only thing we can go off of here is portrayal, which he does seem like the number 3 in the Roger Pirates. Out of all of the Roger Pirates, he's definitely gotten the most screen time besides Rayleigh and Roger, and even when the fights are going down, he steps up with Rayleigh as Roger's top 2 guys. Now, as far as evaluating his strength, I think the best way to do it is using the God Valley incident again. And for Scopper, because we haven't seen anything out of him, I'm not as confident to say that he's going to be taking on Big Mom or Kaido, but given that he's the number 3 of the crew and the Roger Pirates won, at the very least, he would have been taking on like Shiki or somebody. Again, we really haven't seen Scopper in the story, so that's just a personal belief that I have. He could be a lot stronger than I think and kind of equal to Rayleigh and taking on a Big Mom or Kaido, or maybe he's not actually the clear number 3 of the crew and he's a lot weaker than I think. Honestly, I think with Scopper, a good person to compare him to is Odin, because ironically, there's kind of the same discussion going on right now with the Straw Hats, where you have Yamato who has abilities very similar to Odin as a potential Straw Hat member, so you have a lot of people discussing whether or not Yamato will kind of mess up the Straw Hat structure and surpass Sanji. Personally, my belief on this is I want Yamato to join, and I think the Monster Trio will always be the Monster Trio. Instead, Yamato just kind of slides in there as another monster to the crew, but the Monster Trio dynamic will never change. And honestly, with the way the Roger Pirates kind of paralleled the Straw Hats, I think the same thing might have been for Odin and Scopper. The interesting part is that we actually saw them fighting in the anime, kind of like insinuating that they were equal, and I think in terms of strength, they are probably close to equal, which actually really hypes up Scopper because Odin is a beast and we've seen it. He has an insane amount of power, also knows Conqueror's Haki, was the only person to ever scar Kaido, so Odin was ridiculously strong, but I do think he was a clear step down from like the top dogs. Like when he first faced off against Roger, that was a wake-up call for him. And even though Kaido defeated him with a cheap shot, I think if they both went at it, Kaido still would have won. But besides the super elite people that are considered the strongest in the world, I think Oden can stack up next to anybody. And really, him joining the Roger Pirates made up a terrifying crew if you think about everybody that's on that crew. Honestly, I think that version of the Roger Pirates probably can take on anybody and not lose. But unfortunately, we never really saw that crew fight on the big stage. But speaking of the crew, let's talk about the rest of the Roger Pirates. We'll start things off with two people that we actually know very well, and that is Shanks and Buggy. Now, of course, the two of them as they are right now as adults are very different people. Shanks is an absolute monster. He's a Yonko. Meanwhile, Buggy is a warlord and he's a god, and he has the strongest gag armor in the story. But back when they were on the Roger Pirates, they were just young kids as apprentices, and no matter how strong they currently are, I think back then they were still relatively weak and probably two of the weakest members of the crew. If anything, maybe they had a leg up on Crocus, who was just a doctor. But yeah, as far as power goes, I don't think they contributed that much as apprentices. Like, even when the Roger Pirates disbanded, they were still only 14. But you have to consider, at the beginning of the story, Luffy was only 17. And while he was definitely stronger than your average person, compared to the Luffy now, he's an absolute bum. So I think the same thing goes for Shanks and Buggy, who are only 14 and younger. Besides them though, the only other person we really know is Crocus. And like I mentioned, he's not really known for fighting. He's just a doctor that they recruited to help with Roger. But we should give Crocus some props. He went up against some of the strongest pirate crews in the world and he didn't die. And that goes for every other Roger pirate, which there are 22 remaining. But as far as their powers and abilities goes, this is where we really have to speculate, because it wasn't even until recently that we found out their names and we've barely seen them in action. So I'm not gonna go through every single one of them. I think they're all probably very capable, but they're probably not all like ridiculously strong either. Instead, there's probably a smaller group of people that kind of stand out. I guess the red hair pirates could be a good comparison because Shanks probably modeled his crew after the Roger Pirates. And as we found out in a recent SBS, Shanks does have a small group of commanders that he brought to Marineford. So I think the Roger Pirates probably had a group like that as well, but maybe just smaller. I think the best thing we can really use to examine is that fight they had with the Whitebeard Pirates. They fought for 4 whole days to a draw, so both crews had to evenly match each other. And the thing about the Whitebeard Pirates is that they don't just have 3 commanders, they have multiple elites. There's Marco, Oden, Jozu, Vista, and even Whitey Bay. So for the Roger Pirates to fight equally, they had to have other people step up as well. And to me, there were 2 people that always stood out, even in the earlier Roger flashbacks, and that is Nozdon and Sunbel. Nozdon's full name is Seagull Guns Nozdon, but I'm just gonna call him Nozdon if that's okay. But yeah, with those 2 characters, I felt like they always stood out, partially because of their size and appearance, but I felt like there was always like a little bit more focus on them. And interestingly enough, in the fight against the Whitebeard Pirates in the anime, those were the 2 that were highlighted. They were really quick moments, but you had Nozdon clashing with Jozu and holding him off, and Sunbel clashing with Vista. Now, of course, again, this is technically not canon, but we gotta use something here. So I think with those 2, they're probably like the middle tier Roger Pirates. If you were gonna compare them to the Straw Hats, they'd be like the Brook, Frankie, and Robin. But strength-wise, I would still say they're stronger than the Straw Hats because the Straw Hats still have to reach that next level in their primes. Another guy that got some focus in the anime was Taro, so he might be in that group as well. Other than that, we don't really have any other information to go off of, but like I said, I think everybody within the Roger Pirates were incredibly capable. I do hope one day we get to see more because there should be some really interesting abilities within the Roger Pirates because some of their designs are super interesting. Like Millet Pine looks like he's a Viking. Don Quino looks like an obese sailor wearing a Waldo shirt. There's also Yama, who we really don't see, but it looks like he has some sort of tribal design. So I do hope in the future we get to see more of these guys fight because their abilities will speak for themselves. As always, thank you guys for watching. If you want to help support the channel, check out the King Pirates Elite. Go get yourself some One Piece manga with the link in the description. And also, let's play the direction game. On the count of 3, you have to pick up, down, left, or right. If you lose, you have to like, subscribe, and watch this video. 3, 2, 1, left.